Well, that's a portion of one of the most popular TED Talks delivered by social scientist and best-selling author Brené Brown. The 2010 discussion about the power of vulnerability is the fourth most viewed TED Talk of all time. Get this, it has been viewed 31 million times.
I believe it. Brown has spent more than a decade studying vulnerability, courage, shame, and empathy. The Houston resident recently withstood Hurricane Harvey's path and aided her neighbors. Today, she is out with a new book. It's called Braving the Wilderness, The Quest for True Belonging and the Courage to Stand Alone. Brown writes this: true belonging doesn't require you to change who you are. It requires you to be who you are. Brené Brown joins us at the table. Good morning to you, Brené Brown. Good to see you.
Good morning. Good morning.
I'm fascinated by your title, With the Quest for True Belonging and the Courage to Stand Alone, because those to me are two competing ideas. Yet you say they're both important.
Yeah, and the research took me by surprise. I thought belonging is something we negotiate externally with groups of people. I want to belong with this. But as it turns out, men and women who have the deepest sense of true belonging are people who also have the courage to stand alone when called to do that. They are willing to maintain their integrity and risk disconnection in order to stand up for what they believe in.
Are there no circumstances in which you would want to change who you are?
No, and you know, it was crazy for me is guess what emerged as the greatest barrier to belonging? Fitting in.
Yeah.
Because when we fit in, we assess a situation and we acclimate. When we belong, we bring ourselves to it and say, this is who I am. And so real belonging requires us to be authentically ourselves, and very difficult in this polarized environment right now.
Growth is a part of everyone's life.
But growth is a part of everyone. And so it's not about not ever changing who you are. It's about changing to be accepted. That's not a part of belonging. That's a
But you keep saying, but you say though that nowadays we're turning away from each other. This is what I think is so fascinating. We're turning away from each other. We're going to blame and rage. And that when we do that, blame and rage becomes anger, and that's all part of the pain that we're all experiencing. That's fear. Fear leads to terrorism, you're saying, that we're all deeply afraid.
You know, one of the other big shocks, I guess, from the research for me was looking at these two tracks of research that we see emerging across the world globally. One is we are more sorted than we have ever been in the history of the U.S. We have built ideological bunkers. We are more likely now to live with, worship with, and go to school with people who are politically and ideologically like-minded. You would think a natural result of sorting ourselves into these factions would be closer ties, more connection. But as it turns out, as sorting grows, so does loneliness. So we're becoming more lonely as we're becoming more balkanized.
It seems to apply not only to that also, but what you read, what you watch, what you hear.
Everything. It's ideological bunkers and echo chambers. But what's interesting about what happens behind those is it's counterfeit connection. It's not real connection. All it is, I call it common enemy intimacy. The only thing we have in common is we hate the same people.
Yeah. You write about holding hands with strangers.
Yeah.
Explain what you mean.
Well, one of the things that emerged is that a belief in inextricable human connection is a fundamental part of belonging, to believe that we are inextricably tied to one another. That is not breakable, but it is forgettable. We can forget at times. I mean, as a Houstonian, we were just massively reminded. There was no one, my husband was in a kayak pulling neighbors out of their house. There was, at no time did I was in the shelter. Did people say, I'll help you, what is your political belief?
Right.
Who did you vote for? We need to hold hands with strangers. We need reminders, collective joy and pain. Reminders that we are inextricably connected to each other by something greater than us. And we need that on a daily basis, whether it's music or concerts or disaster relief. We need those moments.
But that's not what we're seeing. You talk about dehumanization, that's what you see a lot of people doing now.
I think dehumanization, first of all, dehumanization is at the center of every genocide in recorded history. And every genocide starts with dehumanization. And dehumanization is a very subtle process. It is about moving a group of people, because we're hardwired to not be able to hurt each other. We are hardwired neurobiologically to not be able to kill, rape, torture, beat each other. So in order to be able to do that, we have to slowly move groups of people out of what we consider moral inclusion. We have to move them out of what we see as humanity. And do you know where that starts consistently over history? It starts with language. And if you go on Twitter today, or Facebook, or any social, we see people on the left and right using dehumanizing language about each other like that. And it is terrifying. And I think in the end, it can't be, are you conservative or liberal, right or left? Are you dehumanizing? Are you not? We should all be equally offended by that, regardless of who the target is.
It's so easy to say, let's all get along, but we're not. I mean, so if you could say one sentence on what we could do to change it, and I know it's more than one sentence, but you're a good talker, Brené. Give us a sentence.
I'm not short on the talk. I think one sentence is, we are connected to each other in a profound way. And the thing that moves us away from that faster than anything else is not politics, but fear.
I could talk to you all day. Brené Brown, thank you so much for being here. Yeah.